So I just wanted to talk a little bit during lunch today, just briefly, about the Developer Satisfaction Survey. We have released the results of the survey today. We have a summary report that's available. You can actually get it through the Whova app if you go to the slides/photos section. So it's up there right now, the PDF. You can take a look at it. It's also on the website, and I'll have the link a bit at the end of this. I'm just going to step through some of the kind of highlight statistics that we've gotten out of this year's survey. And so I will just step right through. So in case you don't know much about the Developer Satisfaction Survey, we launched it last year, and it was basically a replacement of the Quality of Life Survey that the IGDA has done off and on for a few years now. So of course we want to update our knowledge of the industry, and we're focusing not only on how developers feel about the industry, but also about how they feel about their individual jobs, their work-life balance, all of those kind of different factors. And just kind of generally gauge, are developers satisfied? Are they satisfied with their work, and are they satisfied with where the industry is going? So this year's survey period we launch as we did last year at GDC. First day of GDC is when we launched the survey and ended in mid-April. So you can see about a 6-week survey period. In terms of demographics, I'm not going to read through all of this, but you can see for yourself what our sample size was, what our location was. So generally speaking, roughly about 50% was in the US, and we had a pretty good coverage throughout the rest of the world. What was really great this year is that thanks to some donated services from Keywords International as well as the IGDA Japan chapter, we had the entire survey localized into Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, French, German, and Italian. So that was pretty awesome. So that really helped us increase our reach. And we also worked through a lot of partners to make that happen. So I just want to go through some of the breakdowns. You can see here one of the things I left out was gender, because that's something we're tracking very closely to understand what our gender balance in the industry is. So you can see here, this is how it broke out. Last year, the female percentage was 22%, so 20.3 with a slightly larger sample, or more than slightly, 33% larger sample. This is generally around what we expected, more or less, because when we have talked with other, or taken a look at surveys in other countries, you can see here just as an example, like the Developed survey in the UK was 15%, Finland is 20%, Canada from the ESA Canada group is 16%. So that's kind of about where we're tracking at the moment in the game industry. So we're pretty much in that ballpark. So I think we've pretty much solidified at least a better sense of the percentage of women in the industry, about 15 to 20%, depending on the locale. Of course, this is all women in the industry. It doesn't break down into like who's programming. We have that data, but I'm not presenting it here. So some of the stats we came up with here, some of these infographics that we had made. So how would you rate your overall job satisfaction? You see there, around 38% said somewhat positive. So very positive was 28%. So generally speaking, people are feeling pretty positive about their jobs. Their outlook on job opportunities, you can see, is not quite so rosy. So it's kind of balances a little more towards the negative side in terms of job opportunities in the industry. I know in my experience and hearing anecdotal evidence from a lot of developers at different conferences around the world, this definitely rings true in terms of their overall outlook. Characterizing the growth rate of their organization in the past 3 years. So pretty good. Growth 59.3%. That's the combination of the moderate growth and the considerable growth categories. So that's pretty good. And then looking forward for the next 3 years, you can see that they're even more optimistic on what the growth of their company is going to be. So that's good news. So developers they're seeing a silver lining. They're seeing some hope in the industry in terms of their growth. Equal treatment and opportunity for all in the game industry. We're still at a very high no number here. Not a surprise at all. A lot of the conversations over the last 12 months or so have really rung true and have underscored this notion. That's why the IGDA and other organizations are involved in a large industry-wide coalition, a diversity in gaming coalition that's not only addressing equal opportunity, but just a lot of issues around diversity in the industry and how we as an industry can do better at kind of spreading the wealth, so to speak. And I don't necessarily mean just money, but also just the ability to get in the industry and to have a meaningful function within the industry. Also, how would you rate your quality of life? So very positive was 29%, somewhat positive 38%. This definitely outweighs the negative, which is a good thing. And if we look at this compared across the data over time, since going back to like the 2004 quality of life survey, it's definitely been getting better. Like we know, for example, that crunch is getting less and less. And if you didn't see it, when we did the 2014 survey last year, we also followed up with 2 reports, one on industry growth and another on employment conditions. And if the employment report digs into this issue quite deeply about crunch time and how crunch has slowly been decreasing, but it's still very prevalent. One of the biggest issues that remains, however, right now is that we still have a very high percentage of people who are uncompensated for their crunch time. So it's still around about a third. A third of developers get nothing for crunching, which is a very serious issue that you will probably hear the IGDA say something about in the near future. Also looking at how important is diversity in game content. It was really great to see that you could see very important, 49.5% people could select more than one. And I think that was the combination of the 2 categories, very important and important. So 71% feel that diversity in game content is very important, and then 66% saying that diversity in the industry is also very, very important. So these numbers are actually higher than the numbers we had last year. So I don't think that is a surprise either, given what's gone on in the last year. There's been a very bright spotlight shown on this issue in the industry. Then asking them what are the most important factors for future industry growth on the biggest scale. What do they think are the things that really need to change in this industry to see more growth? And you can see there, advancement of game design was the top answer, advancement of storytelling. This rang true last year as well. So basically getting down to fundamentals of games. What makes a game compelling? So these factors are pretty high. More diversity in game content, that is higher than last year. That's great to see as well. So better discovery of games is an answer that we heard from a lot of independent developers. That's not a shock at all. That tends to be, when I go around talking to a lot of indie developers, that is the number one concern they have. How do I get discovered? I've got a great game. I need someone to find it. And then we asked them, which developer or publisher by name would you most like to work for? So now we're going to do a little quiz. Who do you think is the number one company people want to work for? Valve. There you go. Blizzard. Any other? I'm not going to belabor this, but Riot. Good. Very good. Who else? No. Double Fine will be on here, yes. The next one is Bioware. Yep, Bioware. Then my own studio. So now last year, my own studio was number 2. That was number 2 on the list. So it kind of shifted a little bit. Nintendo, number 6. Bethesda, Ubisoft, Naughty Dog, and Double Fine. So I'm not touching that one. I'll just say EA is not on this list. So you can see this is really interesting to see how this breaks down. Yes, a lot of the same companies were on the list last year. They just kind of shifted it around a little bit. The top 5 are pretty much the same, except like I said, my own studio was number 2. So so that's how that breaks down. This is one question that we like to ask as well in the survey, factors influencing society's negative perception of the game industry. So last year, the number 1 reason was working conditions. And so, of course, they can pick multiple answers while you see the multiple percentages over there. But sexism among gamers, is that a shock? That's the number 1 answer after the last year. Not at all to me. That's not a surprise. But working conditions to me does remain an interesting thing because I wouldn't expect the public to really have much insight into working conditions in the game industry. So sometimes we wonder if that's an interpretation of game developers wanting the public to know what the game conditions are like in the industry. But that still remains very high. But you can see sexism in the games is also, that was also very high last year. Perceived link to violence, obesity, sexism in the workforce. So all of these are pretty much the same. This one was not even on the list last year, racism among gamers. So again, I think because of the turmoil we've gone through the last year, this has kind of risen to be another issue. And actually the 3 categories of racism didn't even show up in this list last year. So it's very interesting to see. It's yet another thing we have to consider and think about addressing. So there you have it. So it is available now. There it is on our website, and like I said, it's on the Whova app as well. There is a slide and photo section in the app, so you're actually, if you have photos from the event you want to upload, you can upload your own photos there and share them if you want. So there you go. I just wanted to share that, and we will be continuing with this research. We've gotten a lot of fantastic feedback from it. We were very happy to see the response to last year's. It got quoted in the New York Times and Washington Post, and it's been used in museum exhibits as citations, so it's really great. It's exactly what I wanted to see with this data. So there you go. Continue with your lunch. Thank you.